Today, prosecutors dropped the remaining charges against three Baltimore police officers awaiting trial in the death of Freddie Gray, ending the case without any convictions. Gray was a 25-year-old black man whose neck was broken while he was handcuffed but unrestrained in the back of a police van last year. His death added fuel to the growing Black Lives Matter movement, setting off massive protests in the city and led to the worst riots the city had seen in decades. Joining me now is Dr. Martinelli, a forensic criminologist and author of The Truth Behind the Black Lives Matter Movement and the War on Police. Dr. Martinelli, welcome to the show. How did this case against the officers advance so far to trial?
Well, I think the major problem is State Prosecutor Marilyn Mosby and her team did a 24-hour expedited investigation of this very complex case. There is just no way forensically or investigatively that you can do any type of credible investigation and make any type of determinations of culpability with a 24-hour investigation. These cases take weeks and sometimes they take months to resolve.
So the prosecutor in that case spoke out too quickly, and you think that her rhetoric actually led to those charges being filed?
Yeah, there is no doubt. I'm a member of the California District Attorneys Association, even though I'm not an attorney. And I will tell you, having worked all sides, that it appears that Mosby made a political decision. She had an emotional reaction when she should have had a studied and forensic response to analyzing the circumstances, facts, and forensic evidence in this case. Just a horrible miscarriage of justice for these unfortunate officers.
In the entire city, it led, as I mentioned earlier, it led to massive riots. The Black Lives Movement was there, and you've been especially critical of them. You wrote an entire book about it. What's your biggest criticism of the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, I think people need to understand that the Black Lives Matter movement is actually a very militant, Marxist, black nationalist organization that's part of a larger movement globally referred to as One World, One Struggle. And they have plans for law enforcement. They're a very organized and well-funded group, and I call it the 4Ds. They want to disenfranchise law enforcement from the community and diminish their stature, and they do this by spreading false narratives. Then they want to defund law enforcement policing, and then they want to dissolve law enforcement because they understand that law enforcement are the enforcers and protectors of the rule of law, and they're a Marxist organization that do not believe in a democratic form of government. It's just that simple.
How are they defunding the policing there?
You know, that's a great question, and you can see this right now with candidate Hillary Clinton, and she is speaking the rhetoric of the Black Lives Matter movement, and no one in the media has discussed the movement's Campaign Zero. That is a 10-point program that Black Lives Matter is trying to push onto politicians. And one of the points there is that they defund law enforcement programs, and they want to take that money and they want to give that to more entitlement programs for the public. Well, you can't take money away from law enforcement and then demand that law enforcement be better trained. So it's just one of the many things that the movement is trying to do to diminish and dissolve the law enforcement presence in this country.
So you're saying the movement is removing funding from the police by way of politicians?
Absolutely. The politicians are speaking the rhetoric of the Black Lives Matter movement. By the way, it's not my opinion. You can go to my book, which is available on Amazon.com, or you can simply start researching the Black Lives Matter movement on your own and look up Campaign Zero and the 10-point plan for policing in the United States. And Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders before her are both speaking this rhetoric.
Yeah, as you mentioned at the DNC yesterday, we heard from speakers from the so-called mothers of the movement. Those mothers included Eric Garner, Michael Brown. Those were two men who died at the hands of police. Philadelphia's police union complained that Clinton was showcasing these killings without giving equal time to the families of fallen officers. So do you think that they should have perhaps had those fallen officers' widows on stage with them or somehow involved?
Well, I think that you can just take a look at what's happening, and it's readily apparent, and that is that there is no interest from candidate Clinton. And by the way, I'm a very apolitical person. I'm just calling it as it is. Why not discuss law enforcement and the role in society, which is a critical role to maintaining the rule of law and keeping us all protected? Why not discuss the fact that it is very tragic for these officers to have been killed and how it affects their families? And by the way, there is no disagreement, or there should be none, that all of this false narrative rhetoric against police officers and this violence against police officers contributed and was the direct cause of the assassination of many of those officers. We've had a 78% increase in officers being murdered in the United States since last year this time. And if this continues, we will be over 100% of officers being murdered from the rates in 2013. We have never seen anything like this in our country. There is absolutely a war on police taking place.
It's a disturbing statistic. I know that in New York, those police officers there are getting more of a military type gear for them that's going to take place, I think, this fall. Do you agree with that? Do you think that they should have the military type look?
Well, it isn't the idea of the military type look. What is happening is these people, some of which, actually all of which, have resonated with Black Lives Matter, false rhetoric, have been using military tactics against our officers. So, the body armor that we currently that the majority of officers, use right now, is not resistant to high velocity rifles. We need, armored vehicles for extraction to get our officers on scene where there's an active shooter, to protect innocent civilians so that we can extract them and downed officers. We have to use some of these techniques. If we don't use these techniques and we don't have some of this equipment, you're going to see, carnage out on the streets with regards to law enforcement, and that's going to bleed over into the civilian community. And by the way, that is one of the points, the 10 points of the Black Lives Matter policing campaign zero model. They want to completely demilitarize the police, which means take away armored vehicles, take away body armor, take away night vision goggles, take away a lot of the things that we use to protect not only us, but yourselves.
So they want to demilitarize them even though they're getting military type attacks waged against them.
Absolutely. If you saw what happened in Dallas and if you saw what happened in Louisiana, those were military tactics being used against our officers and military weaponry. What are the officers supposed to do to protect themselves, and what are they supposed to do to protect you?
Right. I want to jump back to the DNC. Yesterday Donald Trump tweeted this morning, the Democratic National Convention has paid zero respect to the great police and law enforcement professionals of our country. No recognition. Sad. Trump has been labeled himself the law and order candidate. Is he the candidate for law enforcement, do you think?
Well, I talk with hundreds of police officers across the United States, and I train thousands of them. I have to be very honest with you. And then also being non-political here, I can't find a single police officer that I've talked to that is resonating with what Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Bernie Sanders have said. And you can't just go by what people say. You have to go with prior behavior, and including the behavior that you're seeing right now at the convention. There is nothing that supports law enforcement in any of this rhetoric. It's actually the opposite. They bring in the mothers of felony suspects that have had encounters, including deadly ones, with law enforcement, and those encounters, by and large, have seemed to be justified, albeit tragic, on the part of police. Police have an extremely difficult job in American society, and people had better pay attention that if police start experiencing what we refer to as the Ferguson effect nationwide, your crime rates are going to go through the roof, like we see in Chicago, like we see in Baltimore, like we see in Detroit, and many of our major cities. The citizens can't put up with that. They're going to see more injured and killed citizens.
So you said that police officers, Hillary Clinton's message isn't resonating with law enforcement. What about Donald Trump? Is he resonating with law enforcement?
Well, it appears to be so. So far, the officers that I speak with, including police administrators, are in favor of what Mr. Trump is saying. And first of all, they want to be appreciated. All first responders want to be appreciated for the difficult work that they do. The next thing, they need leadership in this country that understands or is willing to understand the law and police practices and what our role is in society. And the next thing is they need a person that can fund law enforcement, that can fund our training, and will work with the public to better educate them as to what their constitutional rights are and what they're not. And that's a huge problem that we have in the United States. People think that they have rights that they really don't have. They think that if a police officer orders them to do something, they're not required by law to obey that because they disagree with the officer. And if you look at every single one of these instances that have led to deadly resolutions, it has all been with resistance. People do not have the lawful right to resist a police officer's instructions, orders, or commands.
Well, Donald Trump has called himself the law and order candidate. It worked for Nixon several years ago. Trump has certainly seen a bump in the polls. I don't know if Clinton will see the same after the DNC. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Dr. Ron Martinelli, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be on your program.